Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the 2020 podcast, Canada's #1 optometry podcast, bringing clarity to business, optometry, and entrepreneurship. I am your host, Dr. Harbir Sian. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me again on another episode here, guys. Before we get started, I want to give a quick shout out to my man, Randeep Janda, and the Dud Soda gang. You've probably seen me posting a little bit on social media. I'm wearing if you're watching on YouTube, I am wearing the white hoodie, and the little pink cup here is representing that drink, the soda. If you don't know what it is, check it out. It's a traditional. It's not even that traditional. It's a little drink that we used to have as kids, and we still talk about it all the time. And back to the topic at hand, I have another wonderful guest here today to talk to us about optometry, to talk to us about entrepreneurship, because he's built a fantastic brand that's gotten so much traction in the UK, and I'm sure globally now. I'd love to welcome Dhruvin Patel, who is an optometrist and a founder of Ocushield. Dhruvin, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast, man.
Thanks so much for having me, Harbir. Excited to speak all things eyes and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, man. And dude, I love the entrepreneurship side of the conversation. I really do. That's really why I started the podcast in the first place. And you're a legitimate entrepreneur. You've done some really cool things already. But why don't we start with, give us a little introduction about yourself and the brand Ocushield.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll give a little bit of a snippet into my background. So effectively, I studied optometry at City University in London back in 2011 to 15. And while I was studying, I was working on the weekends at Vision Express, which globally is known as Grand Vision, getting my spare change to support my studies and my social extracurricular activities, right? And getting a feel for the industry. And one weekend in 2013, the lead optometrist, she gathered the team and said, hey, we've got this new product innovation for people that wear spectacles. And she mentioned it was something called Blue Control. And she explained, if patients have this coating on their glasses, they'll be able to beat eye strain. And I was really intrigued, because I've grown up with my mother telling me, stop looking at screens, get further away from the TV, that usual spiel. And she didn't really have a reason for it. She just kind of said, don't do it, right? So I thought, is this the missing piece to the puzzle? And I ran back to the university and I demanded from the faculty that I did a research project around the topic, and somehow I got my way. So I did a research topic on how blue light affects the eye's physiology and circadian rhythms. And after 12 months of doing this research paper, I found, yes, artificial and blue light from screens can cause eye strain and headaches, but it also can suppress melatonin, which makes it harder for us to sleep. So at that point, my mind was pretty blown, because I was like, wow, these are massive pain points. Screens are only getting bigger and brighter. And I think when I was doing the research, it was the iPhone 3/4 era. So it's kind of the infancy of the smartphone as well. And selfishly, I said, I really want this product, but I don't wear glasses or spectacles. So I thought, there's going to be people like me out there that don't wear spectacles. How can we take that technology and put it directly onto a screen itself, right? And that's where my journey began with Ocushield, where, Ocushield is effectively a company where we exist to let eyes thrive. We create products that limit harmful blue light exposure from screens, meaning consumers can have fresher feeling eyes and improve their sleep. And when I had that idea, fortunately, my university, they have a sister university called Cass Business School, which they've now renamed to Bayes. But they have an entrepreneurship competition, and it was like submitting an idea and win X amount of money after, winning or whatever. And I was like, oh, what? This is perfect time. I've got this idea. Let me pitch up. And somehow after kind of 2 stages, I was able to convince the public and these judges that my idea and myself could make this happen. And I got some grant funding from the university, and I started developing our prototypes. And after kind of 24 months of hustling and speaking to people, I was gathering people's emails addresses, and I put up a website on Wix.com, and I got about 1,000 pre-orders. Wow. When I was ready with our final kind of prototype. And it allowed me, with a bit of student loan, I kind of used a bit of that, the grant funding and these orders, and it allowed me to bootstrap and start this business and start serving customers that wanted the product. So I pretty much had product market fit while I was developing this. And it almost, I was doing this while I was studying, right? So I I was still doing my final year exams, and then the following year I had to do pre-registration, which maybe something that happens in Canada as well, or the USA, but in the UK, you've got obviously after you graduate, you've got to go into the working profession, do examinations as well as get a feel, and then you're officially, qualified. So I had to do that, and I was doing all of this in the background, evenings and lunches, and it got to a point in 2018 where the business grew to such a point, and I wasn't contractually tied to Specsavers, who was my employer at the time, right? Because I couldn't leave them. But the business grew, and I thought to myself, I can impact up to 20 patients a day by testing their eyes. But with Ocushield, I have the ability to impact, hundreds to thousands of people daily, with what we do. So I took the leap of faith to actually, go full time on the business. And since then, we've served customers in over 70 countries. Our biggest markets are the USA, UK, and Canada, and Australia. And we work with retailers like Best Buy, Verizon. We're launching in John Lewis in the UK, and Ocushield effectively become a business that has an ecosystem of products that limit blue light, whether it's screen filters, glasses, or lighting products. And in a nutshell, that's been my journey up until now. And this is kind of where we're at.
That's amazing, man. That's incredible. And that is in a nutshell, because I know there's a lot of other stuff that's been happening, and I want to tap into a little bit of that. But what a cool journey that you started that in school while you're in university, and your pre-reg or whatever you call it. That's, I think, what we kind of generally call our fourth year here, where we're doing clinical and we get to study for our exams and all that kind of stuff. And that's usually that can be a pretty stressful year depending on your clinical situation. And of course, anytime exams are coming up, that's amazing that you were able to do that. Were you, when you were younger, you're still a young man. You just turned 30, by the way. Happy belated birthday. That's incredible that you've accomplished all of this already within 30 years. But when you were younger, like a kid, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years old, were you already a little bit entrepreneurial minded? Were you doing stuff that was a bit kind of down this road, selling things, making money?
Yeah, I think it was a bit ingrained in me because I've grown up with very working class parents, and I always saw them just work. My parents are Gujarati, and all they did was work, and they wouldn't spend a dime on themselves. It was all about just saving and helping, supporting their kids. So I have an older brother, supporting us, and taking us on the odd holiday every other year. And I just saw them working really hard, and I just thought I didn't feel like they were having much fun outside of what they did with us, right? And I said, how can I really impact their lives? And I think when I was younger, the penny just dropped, and I said, actually, through work, it might not be the best means to help support my parents. And for some reason, I think I read a book at that. It was a book called Millionaire Fastlane. I think this was when I was in my teenage years. It's a really great book. It's written by MJ DeMarco, and the title sounds really like crap, right? But the content within this book is like really fantastic. So anyone that wants to go into entrepreneurship, like, it's a fantastic book, which not a lot of people know about. But I read that book, and it kind of just said, for me, ingrained actually to do something different. And I think via business you can do that. And one of the reasons why optometry as a profession appealed to me was when I was doing work experience in optometry, you can obviously open your own practice. And I thought, wow, this is a profession where I can serve others, which I cared about, through healthcare. But then you can also do something commercial. So, that's again one of the reasons why I went into optometry as well. But you're right, from a younger age, I was doing the usual, buying stuff, selling stuff in the playground. And, I set up a few websites when I was younger as well, and doing random stuff and hustling effectively. But I think it stems from the environment that I grew up in with my family.
I always find that really interesting because, for someone, again, at a fairly young age in your 20s, to have this idea to do this, go down this entrepreneurial journey when you're already studying to become a professional and studying to have your career lined up. But that's not, I don't want to say this in a negative way. I mean this in a positive way. It's not enough. Like, you feel like there's something more that you need to do. That's so cool that you got that from such a young age. I always wondered, it's different for everybody. I don't want someone who, like, for example, myself, when I was a kid, I was not like that at all. I was kind of lazy for a good chunk of my life and just sort of like, live life the way it was in front of me. But, I do have that itch and that need to kind of do more now. So I don't want people to think if you weren't like that as a kid, you can't develop it. But it is interesting to hear that. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because what that reminds me of is my kind of icon, which I'm pretty sure I've told you about, is Richard Branson in this, particularly like the entrepreneurial space. And that when I read his book, that was kind of the case with him too. He'd always been of that kind of mindset when he was younger. And again, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but you worked with Virgin to some degree. Like they provided. How did that work? Can you tell me about what happened with Virgin? Because I know you had done something there. And did you get to meet Branson, or did he post about you? It was something along those lines.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So in the UK, there's this organization called Virgin Startup. So it's an organization which the government funds, which obviously has the Virgin name on it, which I think when I was setting up the business, I went to them because I wanted to get some capital and guidance. So I put application in. I didn't take their money, but what I did take is some mentorship from two of their mentors, which I'm still in touch with, one till this day. And I regularly communicate with them. And what happened with the Richard Branson stuff was actually I went on to the Dragon's Den, so the Shark Tank equivalent in the UK, which is called Dragon's Den, which I believe is in Canada as well, and in a few other countries. And that went really well. And obviously the business had grown. And I went back to the guys at Virgin and said, hey, you guys were the ones that effectively helped in this journey in the beginning. It helped me with a mentor. You gave me some framework. And I think it would be great for you to do, write something about it, maybe inspiring someone else, someone has an idea and they don't know what to do, maybe, writing about this story so it can inspire them. Was effectively, I've gone from an idea to, working full-time into a business and, having a team and doing something, as you said, something unique, which isn't, the traditional path. And they wrote about it on virgin.com, which was fantastic. And I was like, wow, this is great. And then next thing I know, my phone was just blowing up and I was like, what's happening here? And like Richard Branson and Holly Branson, which is his daughter, they both posted on their LinkedIn and Twitter, and it said like, this is what an entrepreneur looks like. And they were talking about the Ocushield story. And I was like, okay, this is really cool, like, wow. So, like it was just a really, I guess for them, it's great for them to vocalize how they've also supported entrepreneurs. And for me, it was like extra validation. Oh, this is great. It's, Richard Branson, these things. And it was good to get a stamp of approval, I guess.
No kidding, man. That's incredible. Sorry, I couldn't remember which one it was, but I remember seeing that. And I remember being like, dang, this guy, this is amazing. To get Richard Branson's stamp of approval is, that means something, coming from one of the biggest and most well-known entrepreneurs in the world. And obviously having grown up in England myself, like in the 80s and 90s, like he was the icon, trying to fly across the world in a hot air balloon and all the stuff he was trying to do back then. He really was kind of the icon of entrepreneurship for us. So really cool that you did that. Now, you mentioned Dragon's Den. That was definitely something I want to talk to you about. So Dragon's Den is pretty big here. That our Canadian version is pretty big here in Canada. And yes, as you said, in the US, it's the Shark Tank. I watched the clip, man. I was like on the edge of my seat. I don't usually watch the show that much, to be honest with you, but I watched that clip and I was on the edge of my seat and I was like, oh man, I hope they get the funding, because a couple of dragons turned you down and then it went this way. Anyways, tell me about the experience, man. What was that like, being there, being in front of the dragons, that whole thing? Just tell me about it.
Yeah, so Dragon's Den was really interesting. So we actually we went into the den to pitch in real life in 2020, and it aired 10 months later in July 21. But what happened was their team reached out to us via email. And it's one of those things with Dragon's Den. It's always, I've watched it as a kid. I've always wanted to go on there, but I've always felt, especially with Ocushield, I thought, is this the right time? Are we going to get laughed out of there? All these questions are going on in your mind. Yeah. And then one of the research team from the BBC, which coordinate the program, reached out and said, hey, we think you'd be great and the business would be great for Dragon's Den. Do you want to apply? And I thought, okay, this might be the seal of approval that we need. So filled out the application form and then didn't hear anything for months because the pandemic kicked off. And what I found out afterwards was, the pandemic kicked off, and then heard back from them in August, and they were like, hey, really sorry, but this all happened, and we've started re-filming now. So actually, your application was great. We now need you to pitch to the producers. We're like, okay, cool. So we pitched the producers, and then very soon after, they were like, right, in 3 weeks' time, you're going to be pitching to the Dragons. We're like, oh,
Wow.
okay, like it moves super fast. So me and Asad, who's my business partner, we spent like literally every other day like pitching to each other in front of each other and to our families and getting ready for obviously this pitch. And yeah, we had to drive up to Manchester in the UK 8 a.m. and drive to the studio. And you kind of get there, and you know, you're kept in your kind of dressing room, and they didn't actually pull us in until about 1 p.m.
Oh, wow.
And you go in and everything. So there's a lift in the Dragon's Den in the UK version, but it's all a studio. It doesn't go anywhere. It's all like one plane. And
I always wondered that.
yeah, it's all fake. The money's fake on the table, all of that, right? It's all props. But you go into the lift, and no word of a lie, but they keep you in the lift for 10 minutes.
Oh,
So
wow.
they have a camera that's on you, and they're saying they get taking shots, and you're just in there for 10 minutes. So by the time it's 10 minutes over, you're pretty much like feeling like, God, the adrenaline's already out, like kind of out of you. You're just like, what's happening? Like, and then suddenly the doors open, and then you're just like, crap, I've got to like now pitch, like, you know, out of nowhere. So you crack on with the pitch, and you know, it's such a, I was really nervous as it was, you know, it's something that you've never done before, something that could affect, you know, the baby I created with Ocushield. And yeah, you're just thinking about everything that could go wrong, right? as we do with our negative biases in our you know, in our minds. But yeah, fortunately got all my words out. Asa got his words out. The pitch went well. As you said, you know, 3 Dragons said no, but the ones we wanted said yes, and you know, effectively they fought over us, and we were able to negotiate them down, and yeah, accept their offer in the den. So it was a really nerve-wracking experience, but one that I would, you know, it's one that I can look back on and say, you know what, I stepped out of my comfort zone and did something, and I can look back at it, right? Was this on TV? You can literally look back at it.
Yeah. No kidding, man. It was cool. It was really cool to watch. I was, like I said, I was kind of nervous on the edge of my seat. I was like, I like this guy. I like what you've done. I hope this way, you know, it's not even for the money. It's just for the publicity and like looking good. I mean, at the end of the day, even if they turned you down, I think there's still some publicity that comes from it. Right. But the fact that, like you said, the 2 Dragons that you specifically, they filmed you saying earlier, like, these are the 2 we'd like to have. And those are the 2 not only accepted your offer, fought for it. That was cool. So that's when you know the pitch was good, right? When there's 2 people like, no, I want it. No, I want it. Okay, let's go in together. That was really cool, man. And you know what I'll do is I'll put the link in the notes. So if somebody's watching on YouTube or listening on Apple, wherever, there'll be a link in there. Go check it out. It's a cool clip to watch. It's cool to see someone from our, you know, our industry getting out there and pitching like that. That's definitely, I know there's a lot of people who watch the show and have always kind of pictured themselves being there one day. But I've always wondered what like it's like. What does it actually feel like when you're there? It's so funny that they like do these things that drain your energy. Like you get there early, you're sitting around waiting, doing nothing, standing in that fake elevator for 10 minutes, and then like go, you know, like go bring all the energy back. But I'll tell you what, man, you didn't look nervous. You and Asad both looked good. I felt like the clips that they showed you presented everything really well. It was fantastic, man. So great job on that.
Thank you. No, appreciate it. We were in there for 1 hour and a half, and obviously the run time of what they show is about 13 minutes.
Yeah.
So you're completely drained like after the
Oh,
experience, but also the producers can make you look bad if they wanted to, I imagine. So, but I think because we got the deal, they didn't want to put a negative narrative around it, right?
yeah.
I think they were kind to us. They must have liked us, right? I don't know. Yeah.
And after the fact, you know, you get the dragons say, okay, we'll come in with you. Now, do you work with them still, or like, are you still working with them, or is that just something that kind of like, because I hear that not all the deals that happen on TV, they don't always all come through, right? There's other stuff that happens behind the scenes.
Yeah, totally. So what happened with us was, you know, what you do after the show is you negotiate a shareholders agreement where, you know, you have heads of terms. And what happened with us and Peter Jones and Tej Lavani was they proposed what they wanted, and it was very they wanted a lot of control, so much so that they could overpower myself, Assad, which as minority stakeholders is pretty wrong.
Right.
You know, if you have anyone coming on your business, it should be there to support the people that have, you know, started it, rather than, you know, a get out jail card for them as investors, you know, which didn't really make sense. It didn't align. So we
Yeah.
negotiated a lot with them on that point. It got to 6 months, from getting that agreement. And we looked back and said, our business has grown like 4 times since we pitched. So although we were ready to sign and be like, we got to a place where we're happy, it didn't make sense anymore. Like the valuation for the business didn't make sense. And we went back to them and said, hey guys, we need a better deal. And they said, unfortunately, we can't negotiate outside of the den. So I had to write an email on a Friday night and say, guys, we're gonna have to say no. This isn't gonna work. Which at the time was, I was sure in the decision, but it was also a bit like it would have been great to work with them. But the right business thing was to do that. And actually, what came from that was like, okay, what do we do next? And we actually went out to raise investment privately. So in Dragon's Den, we raised 75k from them at 15% equity. What we did after, so we just closed a round of investment last year. We raised £1 million and gave away 13% of our business to investors like Jason Ellis, who founded Sprint Mobile and Simply Mac in USA. James MacArthur, who's president of Gucci, and Balenciaga, who's retired now, but he was for 10, 15 years. So we've got people that are dragons in their own right.
No
right?
kidding.
And we got capital as well. That was a lot. So it worked out. That might have not worked out, but something obviously went right in the way we were approaching things, and yeah, ended up.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that, like that insight, the background, the behind the scenes too, because not everybody would be comfortable talking about that. So thank you for that, man. And how crazy is that? Like what we saw on TV, by the time it came on TV, you had already canceled that whole negotiation, but we still got it for the entertainment value and for the branding and the publicity. I'm sure it was huge for you, man. That's incredible. I want to talk about that. That was one of the things. We'll go back to Ocushield in a little bit, but like branding and personal branding and marketing and PR, you do a fantastic job of this, dude. Like whether it's for Ocushield, I love the branding for Ocushield, the design, the aesthetic, everything, just on point, man. But for yourself, like if somebody goes to your Instagram page, you do educational videos, really nicely branded, high quality content. Where does that come from? Is that something that you're naturally, you have an eye for it, or have you learned this from somewhere? Like, why do you know to do these things, or how do you know to do these things?
Yeah, I think even when you watch that Dragon's Den pitch, I think they talk about competition and similar products in the market, etc. And there are products out there that do similar things to what we do. And I very early on realized that actually, when it comes to so I had a conversation with the university. I said, do I patent the technology or do I just go to market? And the advisor said to me, well, you're going to have to pay thousands of pounds for the patent. And then if you need to defend it, you're going to have a big bank balance to defend it.
Kidding.
And I said, well, I don't, I'm a small fish. I don't have nothing. So why do I just want to get started, right? I'm not going to go down the route of trying to so I just got started. And from an early age in this journey, I set about on making sure that the brand was the most important thing to the business, that held its weight. Because when you look at the best companies in the world now, it's it's their brand that resonates, right? You look at the Apples, the Nikes, it's about what they stand for, how they get across their messaging, and how they do their content, or the feel or touch, or how consumers are made to feel once they've interacted with a product. So for me, I think one of my skills within business, because business is so broad, I feel like marketing for me has been something that naturally I've been able to fit into and be an expert on, because I've had to learn like fast, right? I've had to learn what's going to work getting consumers, what's going to work to keep consumers. And when you have that feedback loop, you can really get a good handle on it. And there's nothing better. There's no better education than throwing yourself in the deep end, right? You can do an MBA on marketing or whatever, which is great. You get the theory, but you still have to apply it and then get that feedback as well. So yeah, for me, it was all about the brand, and that's why we went down the route of, hey, we're a blue light blocking brand, and we're healthcare led, developed by optometrists. But how do we make sure consumers can sense that, right? That's why we went down we just got FDA registered in January, for example, in the USA. And we've got the equivalent in the UK, MHRA. So we wanted to make sure that our brand is as strong as possible. And that for me, having things looking great as well is really important. sometimes we try things that might not look great, but it's always a process of trying and learning. But I like clean looking things and
Yeah.
things that look good, because as a consumer myself of our products, I know how important that is.
100% agree with you, dude. I couldn't agree more about everything you just said about the importance of a brand. Like the strength of a brand can carry a company to different levels. Like obviously patents and stuff like that can be very important, but when that's not applicable, like when you're making shoes or phones or whatever, in certain areas, then it's the branding, it's the aesthetic, it's the functionality of it, and all of that's so important. And then like interesting, I thought maybe you had a little bit of a background in branding, but it's all just come from being like doing it. And I love that too, because personally, I had started my own e-commerce brand about 5-6 years ago, and I knew nothing really about branding other than what I'd seen out there. And so then it came down to like, how do I get people to envision themselves wearing this eyewear? Or like, how do I get them to, like, when they're opening the box, to feel like they're doing something special, like they're opening an iPhone box? All those things are resonated with me. And so, people will ask me that question about branding. Why do I know about branding? And it's because I had to learn it to get a brand out there. So it's cool to hear that. And that's how you get confidence in it, is that you do it, you learn, you do it again, you get confidence, you do it better the next time. So really cool to hear that. We talk about blue light a lot in this conversation, obviously, because that's what Ocushield is for. There's been for years now, 10 years or more than that, I'm sure, conversations about blue light, mixed conversations. It's good, it's bad, it's, whatever device is protecting your eyes is helpful, it's not helpful. There's people on opposite ends of the spectrum. Where does Ocushield fall in that? And how do you approach like having this mixed information?
Yeah, no, I think within the profession especially, I think there's a lot of mixed views and opinions on blue light as a whole. Does it affect the eyes? Does it affect the sleep? Does it affect the skin? All these questions. And I know, the way we approach it is we say, look, there's clinical papers on both sides of the fence. We know that there's some papers that say yes, using blue light filtering products will help mitigate eye strain and headaches and improve your sleep. And then there's some papers that say, actually, we ran a study and nothing happened to these people, right? And for us, I've been doing this now for kind of 7 years. I've been in from the grassroots when blue light wasn't as big as it is now, right? Before blue light filter software got installed into Apple devices or Android devices, before the Warby Parkers or the bigger brands started bringing it out into their kind of marketing. And right from the get-go, I've seen that early research which pointed to blue light being detrimental for us. And I think now what's happening is, because there's more research happening in the space, the volume of studies which say against is increasing, but also for is increasing as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And dependent on the professional and what research you look at, you make your mind up effectively. And us being healthcare professionals, I think everyone errs on the side of caution 9 times out of 10. So when they give their advice, they really want it to be a bona fide piece of advice. But what I say to optometrists here in the UK as well is, I always challenge them to say, well, actually, if you have something that can improve a patient's well-being, aren't you neglecting them by not giving them the advice to maybe even try it or interact with it? Because what if it can help them? That's the biggest change they're going to feel. And you don't need to wait for the whole industry to adopt something. You can be a change maker. And with wellness now, everything, people are open to trying things which are years ahead of clinical trials. Sometimes you can't get clinical trials done. For example, with macular degeneration, it's such a disease that requires monitoring over such a long period of time. I know there's in vitro studies of blue light and macular degeneration, but blue light from screens and macular degeneration, that research paper will never happen, because it takes decades of following like children around to see if it's going to impact macular degeneration, right, for example. So I think from our perspective, the approach is, we look at the research, we're very pro mitigating against blue light, and we have advisors that are ophthalmologists all around the world, psychologists, and also physicians that support us in different areas. And what I'd also say is, for us, when we get lots of testimonials from customers, right? We got over thousands of them, and reading those testimonials, for us gives us the credibility that actually what we're doing makes an impact.
Yeah.
People saying, hey, I suffer from headaches daily from looking at my screen. Now I don't have any more migraines. I can work and my employer's not on my case because I'm not getting stuff done. Stuff like that is just like, well, for us, it keeps us going, especially as well when there's the naysayers around. So I say to any professional, it's kind of have a holistic view, look at all the different research out there. And, we've also created a white paper with Dr. Shelby here in the UK, who's a neuroscientist. So if anyone wants that white paper, happy to share it with you as well. And maybe if you want to put it in the quick links, then
yeah, if you could share that, if that's something you don't mind me sharing publicly, I could put that in the notes as well, and people can look into that. I'd love that. There's a lot of people who listen who I know are into the nitty-gritty details and want to learn more. So that would be fantastic. I think that's important that you take that kind of holistic approach. And it's not, I think the problem was it became such a fad, blue light blocking, right? Everybody was touting this is magical. This blue light blocking glasses that you buy off Amazon for $20 are magically going to change your life and prevent cancer. Literally people were saying that. And it's that when you get to that, that's when the problem arises, right? But if you talk about it appropriately and you see all sides of it and you say, okay, well, here's where it can help you, given all the information, and it won't hurt you. It might help you. And you, like you said, you have all the testimonials. So when I talk to my patients about it too, I give them the full scope. And we definitely are very careful where we're making claims. I think that's where people were getting in trouble, and rightfully so. But it's nice to see that you're kind of taking this more holistic approach and you have all the positive feedback from your clients and customers. That kind of speaks volumes itself, right? And people might say it's a placebo. I'm not speaking for you. This is for me. Like if somebody said to me, Harbir, the blue light blocking glasses you sold are just a placebo, I'd be like, look, if it made the person happy, that's all that matters, right? Placebo or not, they're feeling better. I don't know what to tell you. People can get mad at me for that, Dhruvin, not you. Okay. So let's get back to entrepreneurship. What advice would you have for any young budding entrepreneurs, people who kind of want to start, maybe are afraid to get started? Any words of advice that you'd have for them?
Yeah, sure. I think if you have an idea which keeps you up at night or you can't stop thinking about, pursue it, get started. Don't wait around for the perfect time. The perfect time doesn't really present itself. And for me, I started my journey while studying, whilst working. And actually, the best way to de-risk anything, if you are, let's say you are a professional, you might have a family, you might have dependents, it might be really difficult for you to, stop and put all your eggs into a business, right? But actually getting started while you're working or studying is the best way, because even if you put all your eggs into one basket and stop working, you're not going to be paying yourself from your business for a good, I'd say minimum 2 years. So you've got to understand that in itself is really difficult. When you launch your business and you might have bad days, you don't want to be worrying about, your finances. So actually starting while you're employed or studying actually makes so much sense, because you get that feedback. You can double down if things start growing. And for me, that was my route of entrepreneurship and what I'd recommend to any professionals within the industry. And then the second bit is, try to find your tribe of people within entrepreneurship, like-minded individuals that like to think outside the box, do something different. If you want to really go at it, you need people to foster those ideas and challenge you, rightly so, but also push you forward when you need. So yeah, I'd say those are the two things.
That's amazing advice, man. Thank you. And I think that idea of, if it keeps you up at night, then it's probably something you should do. Definitely, I've had that experience myself. So it's good to hear that from somebody who's followed that advice themselves and been successful at it. I always end the podcast with 2 questions. Before we get to those 2 questions, I want to ask, please share, where can people find you? Where can people find Ocushield? What kind of contact information would you like to share with everybody?
Yeah, sure. So you can find Ocushield on ocushield.com, which is OCUSHIELD.com. You can contact me through that contact us page, or you can reach out to me on my Instagram or LinkedIn. So if you search Dhruvin Patel on either of those platforms, I should show up. there's not too many of us around. So I've been fortunate that I've got somewhat of a unique name, so you should be able to find me on
awesome.
there. But yeah, I'd love to hear from people. Feel free to direct message me, or if there's anything I can help with, then I'll be happy to do so.
Yeah. You can be the Richard Branson of the eye care industry, now mentoring the young budding entrepreneurs. So there's two questions. The first one, I'm actually going to change. So I went to the Vision Expo East. I was telling you, I went to this really amazing meeting, the Vision Monday Leadership Summit. And one of the speakers, so the first question I usually ask to my podcast guest is, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give yourself? If you could go to a point in your life when you were struggling, what advice would you give yourself at that time? And this lady who was doing this talk, and she was a successful entrepreneur, she's like, I hate that question. When people say, what would you tell yourself? Who cares? Like, look, you are where you are now. Like, and I was like, you know what? That's a good point. And especially if you're happy with where you are, like, some guests will say, oh, I don't want to give myself any advice because then it would change where I am. And I get that. So she changed the question. She said, instead of asking yourself, giving yourself advice when you were a kid, how about, I'm going to ask you the question. You're the first person I'm asking this question to, Dhruvin. So this is a test run. Okay. You're the guinea pig. What would your 9 or 10-year-old self tell you or say to you about what you are now?
Oh, I think the 9 or 10-year-old would say to me probably, I'm proud of you. I'd say, I think, it's probably, I'd say, I think at that point, I mean, back then I probably had no idea what I wanted to do properly. It's all wanted to be a footballer or whatever, or what you imagine in your life, right? But I think they say, I'm proud of you. I think keep being patient. I think in this journey of what we want, we always want things very quickly, and I've learned through this process being patient is so important. Because good things just take a lot of time. So actually, for where I'm at myself personally, it is the perfect timing for me in my life. So I think, that's what the younger me would say.
Cool. I know it's a tough question because when she asked it, I was like, I don't know what younger me would say, to be honest. Some good things, some bad things, probably. But but the last question I like to ask all my guests is, everything that you've accomplished, and really, man, you've accomplished a lot already in your young career. How much of it would you say is due to luck, and how much is due to hard work?
I think a lot of it is down to hard work. If I'm honest, I think luck comes into it because you create those opportunities. I think as we were discussing, about personal brand and putting yourself out there, putting yourself into uncomfortable places, I think that all creates opportunities, which then create your own luck. So I think nothing happens without the hard work. Like literally, nothing happens. So you have to put that work in, and then you build systems around that to then amplify what you're doing. But the luck is a byproduct of the hard work.
I love that. Luck is a byproduct of the hard work, and I think I would have to agree with that. Awesome, man. Any last words that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
No, it's been great speaking to you, and I think it's great to see that there's the profession. There's people like yourself as well within the profession that want the profession to do more and give them ideas to do more. And I think we're seeing that in the UK as well. I speak to the university and the coordinator for the whole course of optometry saying, I want people to be thinking outside of just testing, because there's so many brilliant minds within the industry and they can innovate in so many ways. And they have patients to test on, right? To with their innovation. So there's so much that can be done. But I think it's fantastic that with what you're doing as well, you're encouraging more of it. I think it's exciting to see.
Thank you very much, Dhruvin. I appreciate that. And that's actually exactly what the purpose of the podcast is to get people in our industry and our profession to see others who are doing big things, thinking outside of the box, taking the risks, tackling the challenging opportunities and growing from there. I want people to see that, and I want them to extract that and do it in their own lives. And so thank you for sharing that with us. I really appreciate it. And thank you for coming on the podcast, dude. I really appreciate you being on here. I look forward to staying in touch with you and learning more from you. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in to the 2020 podcast, Canada's #1 optometry podcast. We will be back with another episode next week. Make sure you stay tuned.